Rothschild family and the main factors behind France's downfall and revolution. Last episode, we tackled the role played by the Rothschild family and the order of the Illuminati they established in sparking the French Revolution. At the end of the episode, we notified of tackling the factors and reasons which contributed in the success of the Rothschilds' plot against France to topple the king, the kingship, and the church. First, there is an important question which will clarify why did the plot against France turn out well. The question is, why did not the major states' governments, which had been warned of the German state of Bavaria, take the necessary procedures regarding these documents with the Rothschild family and the order of the Illuminati? The answer is that the power the Rothschild family, who stood behind the universal revolutionary movement, had was greater than that of the elected governments. The symbols of the plot benefited from people's naivete and carelessness, so they managed to underestimate the documents so as not to be deemed a big source of danger. Now to providing some examples, the sister of Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France, sent a number of letters to her sister, the Queen, alerting her to the plot scheme and the involvement of the Rothschilds, the owners of international banks, in it, as well as to the role to be played by the Freemasons forums in France. However, Queen Marie Antoinette 1755–1793, daughter of Emperor Francis I, Emperor of Austria, and wife of King Louis XVI, King of France, did not believe such hidden things. Marie Antoinette replied to her sister's letters with lengthy messages. In response to her sister's warnings that the Illuminati in France are working under the guise of charity masonry to destroy the state and the church, Marie Antoinette sent to her sister saying, "As for France, I think your concern is exaggerated about Freemasonry. It is of less importance than anywhere else in Europe." Most history studiers believe that Queen Marie Antoinette was a wanton woman who drifted behind the stream of fun and pleasures that pervaded the French court. They were also talking about many love cases attributed to her. Actually, Marie Antoinette's image was nothing but the image the Jewish Balsamo and his colleagues drew, in the scope of the defamation campaign they launched against her, and the thing which helped them successfully establishing that image in the minds of the masses is that the masses rushed 4 years after the revolution demanding her beheading, which came to be a fact. In this context, light is necessary to be shed on non-French interventions in the course of the revolution and its preparations in France, as the Jews in Britain were not far from that but were at the core of the conspiracy. There is conclusive evidence that the Rothschild usurers in England are linked to the conspiracies that led to the French Revolution. This proof was dug up by Lady Queenborough, the author of Occult Theocracy. This was during her research when she found an old printed publication called Anti-Semitism written in 1849 by the Jewish Bernard Lazare. Out of the information included in the book, Lady Queenborough concluded that Benjamin Goldschmidt, his brother Abraham and their partner Musa Mekana and his nephew Sir Musa Montaguer, were all Jewish financiers in England, and were associated with their Jewish brothers in Europe and worked with them to spark the French Revolution. Other evidence was found to prove the link of Daniel Itzing from Berlin, and his brother-in-law David Fitzlander and Heissgräber from Alsace with the Rothschild family and the plot. Hence, the mask falls off the people who, at that time, were the invisible force behind the universal revolutionary movement. So, what are the names of those of the hidden power which sparked the universal revolution? Meyer Amschel Rothschild, Adam Weishaupt, Moses Mendelssohn, Coderlos de Laclos, Cagliostro Joseph Balsamo, Bernard Lazare, Benjamin Goldschmidt, Britain, Abraham Goldschmidt, Britain, Musa Mekana, Britain, Musa Montaguer, Britain, David Fitzlander, Berlin, Heissgräber, Alsace. It is important to study the methods these Rothschild usurers used to get the government in a financial deficit, as the same methods were later used in America, Russia, Spain, and other countries. In his book, The Life of Napoleon, Volume 2, the British writer Sir Walter Scott drew a picture of the method of control that the Jew Rothschilds followed in France. He said, "These Jewish usurer financiers treated the French government as the usurers treated a prodigal spendthrift bankrupt. With one hand, they lend him the money needed to squander and waste, while with the other hand they squeeze the wealth residues that are wasted to unreasonable interests. Thus, a long chain of destructive loans was given by these usurers, followed by various rights and privileges obtained as a guarantee to collect their debts, and thus the financial state of France was flurried. After the conditions of the French government worsened markedly, it was obliged to apply for new loans to finance their war projects it got involved in by the conspiracy group. The Rothschilds gently offered to provide the French government the necessary loan, as long as they took over writing the contract agreement. The conditions they had provided were apparently soft and tolerant, but again they managed to stick their nose into the issue, that is, to introduce their delegate to the French government. That delegate was Mr. Necker, whom the financiers requested to be appointed as the Minister of Finance for the King's Advisory Council in exchange for providing the loan. The Jews claimed that Necker, who is a charming financier, would be able to recover France from her financial hardship in no time. But what happened along the following 4 years was that Necker contributed to the French government's involvement with the Rothschild Jewish financiers in the worst way. That the value of the national loan amounted to £170 million. Ramsay described this situation meticulously in his book A Nameless War, saying, "The revolution is a blow given to a paralyzed body. When the debt hold tightens, the creditors keep control over various media facilities and political activities, while tightening the grip on industry, management, and workers at the same time. Thus, the theater becomes ready for the blow of the revolution. The right hand, which is the hand of financing, spreads paralysis in the body, while the left hand, which is the hand of the revolution, holding a dagger, throws the knockout at the victim, while the background corruption facilitates the process and paves the way for it." As Balsamo's propaganda posts invoked curses over the heads of church and state officials, the agents of the conspiracy were organizing and training the people who were decided to be made leaders of the terrorist rule that would follow the collapse of the monarchy. Among these leaders were Robespierre, Danton, and Marat. The men who were chosen to attack the Bastille, and to release the prisoners and the imbeciles to create the atmosphere needed for the predetermined and pre-prepared terrorism rule, would meet at the Jacobite monastery. Thus, the details of the bloody plans were drawn on the walls of that sacred building, and the lists of the names of the nobles and the king's supporters who must be assassinated were written there. The criminals and the lunatics released were decided to go ahead publicly slaughtering, murdering, and raping the masses of the people. At the time, the elements of the secret cells run by Manuel, the prosecutor general of the Paris Commune, which is the following revolutionary Paris government, collected the big political figures, the heads of clergy and officers known to be loyal to the king. Hence, revolutionary men were formed of the secret Jewish formations in the Jacobin clubs for training. They were working under the command of their trained and experienced leaders to direct the terrorist rule, as they were required to lead the massacres and acts of aggression to serve the goals of their undercover masters and to push the plot a step forward in the direction of its far-reaching goal. There is also an important note. A wide curtain of silence has descended by major publishing houses and libraries over Sir Walter Scott's 9 books on the French Revolution, and it is difficult for a researcher to find any of them except in museum libraries. His books' publishers abandon mentioning the names of these books along with other books, all because of, or under the pretext of, anti-Semitic sayings attributed to Scott. Finally, it is likely that these mentioned people, in addition to Amschel Meyer Rothschild, were brought together by Meyer Rothschild to lay the foundations of the Universal Conspiracy in Frankfurt in 1773. At the end, the plot of the Rothschilds, executed by the hands of the Order of the Illuminati and their soldiers, succeeded in sparking the French Revolution, toppling the French monarchy, undermining the existing regime then and executing the representatives of the kingdom. The Rothschilds controlled France with its economy. Next episode, we will come to talk about the Rothschild family's plot to control Britain and its economy.